Hey, welcome back to the Club Junkie Podcast. Hopefully you're having a great week. We are back from the PGA show. It was a wild week. I will get into some of the details there. But before we do, just want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Titleist. How does the best get better? Well, we're going to find out because there's a brand new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X. The original full launch of the Pro V1 was in 2000, so this marks the 25th anniversary of the Pro V1. Titleist R&D asked players what they wanted new in the Pro V1 and Pro V1X, and they said more spin on scoring shots into the green. R&D delivered, as both models give players increased spin, but they also provide more speed off the tee and more control with the irons. Many on tour are already gaming the new Pro V1 and Pro V1X, including Ludwig Aberg, Wyndham Clark, and Will Zalatoris. The new Pro V1 is a great fit for most players and a great place to start your golf ball fitting process. Compared to Pro V1X has a higher flight and a firmer feel. And there's also Pro V1X Left Dash. If you're into looking for a similar flight to Pro V1X, but with much lower spin and a firmer feel. Visit Titleist.com for everything there is to know about the brand new Pro V1 and Pro V1X. So we are back. Yeah, PGA show was last week. It was wild. It's a whole lot of fun. It always is every year. It's just crazy. So before we get into that, though, we're going to talk about some clubs. I know a lot of people kind of complain like, oh, you talk about other stuff before you get into the reviews, and some people are here just for the reviews. I totally get it. So for 2025, I'm going to change it up. We'll get into the reviews first. That way, those people can be happy. And then if you want to listen to stuff about the PGA show, we will jump onto that as well. So. Yeah, we have what I was going to have been hitting lately, and unfortunately it's all indoors because it is a frozen tundra outside. It is snowy, ground's frozen, all that jazz. Been hitting indoors, been hitting, we thankfully here in Michigan, we get a lot of indoor places. Got some great ones that use TrackMan and stuff like that. So you never have to worry about really like accuracy and things like that. So today we're going to talk about two brand new irons, and they're both from Mizuno. So Mizuno has brand new JPX925 Forged irons, as well as the new Mizuno Pro S3. So we're going to start with the S3, which is the brand new iron. We saw this in, I think it was Adam Shank's bag, out on tour last year. And this is a brand new cavity back iron from Mizuno. It is the Mizuno Pro S3. So a really good looking iron. From the back, I mean, it looks really good. It's got a really shallow cavity, and it's kind of a dual cavity where they can kind of work on getting CG where they want it. That's why you're seeing kind of that split cavity design. You can kind of get that CG in line for each iron, so that way the 4-iron can launch a little higher, get a little high in the air, easier to hit, or the pitching wedge, 9-iron, all that are going to offer this more penetrating flight for easier control. So really kind of cool design, but very simple, very classic. The blade length is, they say blade length long. I think this one's a little bit more compact. It's not quite as long toe to heel. The face height looks really good. Overall, just a beautiful iron. And they did it in kind of that nice kind of Mizuno matte finish. But the S3 is really great. It's going to be in the line for a while. They're going to keep this in the line. This isn't going to be like just a 1 or 2 year and gone and onto something new. They're going to keep this in the line for a while. So if you're a player who likes find something they like, wants to get another set, this will be something that's going to be available over a few year span. So very cool that they're doing that. And I think with irons like this that are just this old school one piece forged cavity back, there's just not a lot of tech. Like, what do you do to really change things up? So why not keep it in the line, put everything you can into it now, and then keep it in the line for a while, and the people who love it will keep playing it, and it'll just be there for new sets and things like that. Really like that idea, but when you look at it, a beautiful iron, very, very minimal offset, a pretty darn thin top line, and it's not razor blade thin, it's pretty darn thin, and this thing realistically is very bladish. I mean, it is built like a blade. There is no hollow anything like that. It is a pure one-piece forged iron. It's grain flow forged like everything from 1025E carbon steel, and it does have the copper underlay for feel underneath the chrome. So very cool set. I think they make 3-iron through pitching wedge on these. I just have the 5.7 and pitch. I just have the 3 irons, but I've taken those out and hit them. And these things, like I said, from address look really good. I will give one knock to the pitching wedge. I feel like the pitching wedge is a touch boxy, and the face height is a little short. Compared to the rest of the set, compared to the 7 and the 5. 7 and the 5, I set them down. I absolutely love them. The pitching wedge, I wish they were just maybe a touch more rounded and softer. It's just got a little square toe that I think doesn't flow as well with the set. But overall, I think it's a great set of irons in terms of looks and everything like that. And then the only thing I can't really comment on yet either, because I've just been hitting stuff indoors, they've got a brand new triple cut sole, which has got a kind of pre-worn leading edge, little trailing edge relief, and then the sole. So it plays super narrow like a blade, but that leading edge is going to help get that pre-worn leading edge is going to help get the leading edge down a little bit, get the ball contact up. It's also going to kind of reduce some of the digging as you get into the turf, and then that trailing edge on it is going to help that thing release from the turf quickly. So overall turf interaction should be really good. When you just look at them, give them the eyeball test, they've got a decent, a little bit of bounce there, not too bad. They should play pretty well in most conditions. So these here, I think these are going to be more for the skilled player. I think a guy like myself, who's that 10 handicap, can sometimes hit it good. I just don't think these are going to be for us. I think these are going to be pretty demanding. I mean, not to say that you can't buy anything and put it in your bag, but these things definitely are a little more demanding than I thought. I thought they were going to be a little easier to hit, a little more forgiving with the cavity, but then after getting them out there and seeing some of the shots, I can definitely tell that you better strike it pretty close to center, or you're going to have a rough day in terms of distances. But these are built for highly skilled players. I mean, we're going to see these on tour. We're going to see these in, highly skilled amateur bags, NCAA bags, Corn Ferry, whatever. These are built for precision players. So overall, big fan of the looks. I think Mizuno did a great job with these. I know we've all been kind of waiting. And I will say this too, like we had photos from what's in the bag from Shank's bag. And I first didn't like them. I thought they were really stretched from heel to toe, whatever. They looked interesting from the photos. And getting them in hand, I think they are fantastic. I think they look so much better than the photos. They didn't do them justice. So really impressed with how good these things have turned out and how good they look. So the S3s, in terms of performance, the first thing, we'll talk feel and sound. Honestly, this might be one of the softest irons I've hit in I don't know how long. I think the only thing that I've hit that feels as good as this when you strike it dead center is some really high-end Japanese stuff. These things feel spectacular. Mizuno did an absolute phenomenal job. When you strike it dead center, they are so soft. And I know it's like buttery soft is kind of like that weird term everybody uses. These are spectacular. I mean, they could be the best feeling irons that I've hit, like I said, in absolute years. I don't know if anything comes close that I even have in my collection of irons. These things feel spectacular. The first shot I hit with a 7-iron, I absolutely nuked it, just dead centered it. And it was almost like you didn't feel anything. Like the ball just, the club came into the ball, you kind of feel the ball compress and it just goes. There's no click. There's just this solid, that whoosh and thud that you see on TV that we all just absolutely strive for. Like you get that with this when you hit it dead center. And it felt spectacular. And it felt good in the 5-iron. It felt good in the 7-iron. It felt good in the pitching wedge. Now the 5-iron, I had a few less shots dead center on that compared to the 7 and the pitching wedge. But throughout the set, they feel fantastic. When you do miss it, you're going to get a little, like any club, you're going to get a little bit more vibration, a little bit more of that kind of audible click sound. It's there, but it's extremely muted. Again, I was really shocked when I did miss it off the toe or hit it a little thin. I was expecting some real harshness, some like blade-like just punishment from the iron, and definitely didn't get that. I mean, you definitely got a little bit, but it wasn't near as bad as I thought. And I mean, these things are Rockin' Project X60s, so I mean, these aren't like soft shafts that are just going to take, just take all that and wash it away. Like you're getting what the head gives you. And honestly, yeah, the misses were much better than I thought in terms of feel. Now I'm assuming if you get really far out, whatever, you can definitely drum up some vibration. But the misses there are really good. I think those feel players who love responsiveness, who love kind of feeling that of like, oh, I caught it just a hair off the toe, whatever. You're going to get that. You're going to get all of it, and you're going to get it in bucketfuls from these irons. So I think that part is really good. And again, sound and feel, they did a spectacular job, whether it's, all through the set, 5-7 pitch. They were all really good. And like I said, those solid shots crave more. Like you want to be a better player to play these irons, which was really, really cool. So overall, really impressed. I think they've just made a solid iron here. I think we're going to see a lot more of these out on tour as guys start changing over and trying them. And I think the same thing in amateur bags. When you look at guys who are, 5 and below, stuff like that, you're going to see a lot of these hit there because once you hit them, I just don't see how you walk away from them. I guess if the numbers are crappy, but in terms of feel, that is not going to be a selling feature that's going to, you know, turn you away or anything like that. So really, really good, really solid there. And then, yeah, we get into performance. I think performance with these, you know, for what they are is great. I mean, there's no tech, there's no thin face, there's no, you know, crazy, you know, tungsten stuff, foam filling, anything like that. So distance wise, they are not crazy long. When I hit it absolutely flushed, and I'm not going to make an excuse. It's the winter. I don't hit a lot, you know, as many golf balls. When I absolutely flushed it, a 7-iron for me is typically around. I try to get 160 carry. Like that's my goal, 160 carry. I'm not a huge hitter, as you guys know. I'm not some, you know, beast. These here, I was, you know, even hitting it flushed, I was kind of struggling a little bit to get it to that 160 area. I was seeing 158s, 159s, things like that. I got a few balls over 160 with the 7-iron. But you have to generate the speed. You need to create the speed. But on the plus side, when you do that, it's extremely consistent. So when you hit it flush, you knew how far it was going, and it was within a yard or two. I mean, it really was. The 7-iron on this is 34 degrees aloft, so significantly weaker than a lot of the irons I play. So that's, you know, understandable why when I missed it, you were seeing 150s and 140s on the on the launch monitor. But again, you're looking at something that's significantly weaker, which some people may really like. Excuse me. I know a lot of people don't like the stronger lofts of newer irons, but when you hit it flush, extremely consistent. Like for me, stuff that was in just like 2 yards. When I hit it solid, I think the lowest I saw was a 157 and the most I saw was a 160. So 3 yards for me in terms of dispersion with hitting it pretty darn solid. And that's assuming I'm not delivering it exactly the same way in terms of launch and all that. Extremely consistent. But the big thing I was kind of shocked with was when you did miss it, and I mean slightly missed it because it was a shot that was still pretty playable. Again, you never saw wild dips if you were close. Now, if you got it out far, you know, out away from the center a decent amount, you'll see a dip. Like I want to say like the first shot I hit for the 3-swing challenge, I want to say I missed it, and it was like a 140 carry, and I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be a little struggle. But as I said, these are more demanding than a lot of the other irons. Like these are more demanding, I think, than 243. These are going to be more in line with maybe being slightly more forgiving than 241. So this thing here, when you hit it dead center, extremely consistent. I think there's a decent amount of spin with these as well, where you're not going to worry a whole lot about, you know, flyers and crazy, you know, jumpers and things like that. They're going to give you what you give it. You know, if you give it a good swing, it's going to give you that, and it's going to be consistent. But it was just consistent across the face. Like my miss lately has been more off the toe, and those toe misses, again, while they dropped, they all kind of stayed in the same range. Now, for me, the one big thing I noticed was as I don't carry as much speed as I will probably in the summer when I get a little, you know, it gets a little warmer, I get a little more flexible, whatever. The 5-iron was definitely something that was a little struggle to come up to my number. I try to get that to like 180. But I think the best I saw there was 175 when I struck it well. And again, this is definitely weaker. It's a 27 degree 5-iron, so definitely weaker, but I was not, these things are not long. And that's fine. And pitching wedge wasn't as bad. I think that I try to give, you know, it tries to be like my 120 to maybe 125 club. And for that there, same thing. I could kind of hit the 120, but that was about the max extent of I could get it. And pitching wedge is 46 degrees. So again, a hair weaker than some of the distance stuff that I typically play. But overall, the big thing is consistency. When you hit it solid, or even when you missed it, you kind of had an idea of where that ball was going to go. And I think that for the player who fits into this is really, really good. But the consistency is there. And the same thing with spin. Like you didn't see spin numbers that just wildly went off the planet. Like when you hit a fade, you saw more spin. When you hit a draw, you saw lower spin. But it was all within kind of like this window. And again, same thing when you miss shots, you know, you didn't see anything just get crazy. And I think for better players, consistency is what it is, and precision. Those are the two things they're looking for, and I think this thing delivers it. So when I was hitting this, hit a bunch of balls, and I averaged distance-wise a carry of 155. I definitely saw some stuff with 140 in there when I really missed it, but when I flushed it, I could see a repetitive like 159, 160 that just came out. It just was really, really there. And again, those misses I had all seemed consistent as well. So if I missed it off the toe and it went 145, and I did it again a few swings later, it was 146 or 144. They all stayed right around there. So I knew like, oh, if I hit that shot out on the course, I would just be, you know, short of the green and have it chip. Like it wasn't crazy. It was always where you thought it would be, which was pretty cool. So my carry distance on average on all the shots, and again, I don't delete everything. I keep it all in there unless it's like flat out shanked. So 155 was my average carry distance for the Mizuno Pro S3 7-iron. Spin came out to 58.83. Now, I'm a guy who does not fade the ball a ton. Most of my shots are fairly straight to a little bit of draw. When I was hitting fade shots, it was stuff in the low sixes for me. So like 61, 6,200 when I faded it. And I saw a few pretty low down in like the 53 if I hit a big old draw. So again, I think spin-wise, that's pretty darn good. The days of, I think, going, 7-iron has been 7,000. With today's balls and things like that, I don't think that's really relative anymore. So, just being around 6,000 on average for a guy who's a straight to slight draw, I think is a great spin number for me. Ball speed averaged about 109 miles an hour. So when I went through 109, and again, when I hit it flush, I'd see the 112s. I think I even saw a 114 on there when I hit it really, really solid. But then you throw in a feit misses and you could see that drop to the 102s and things like that. So 109 overall was my average for ball speed. And again, it just kind of preached the consistency side of it, that when you missed it, you kind of knew what you were getting. And when you hit it flush, you knew what you were getting. And that's what showed up. Launch on these was average at 19.7. Saw a lot of stuff in the 20s. These things were actually easy to launch. They got up higher than I thought. And I think for a lot of players, these things are just going to be easy to get up, but you can still hit it low. I mean, when I hit my kind of like hooky little draw, you would see a flatter trajectory that came out. And even though these are easy to launch, I think the better players are going to be able to work them, flight them up, flight them down, no problem, work them right and left. These things are going to kind of be that scalpel that you can kind of carve up the green and hit the shots you need to hit into those different pin positions. So 19.7 was my average launch, and this is all for 7-iron. And then the apex on this was 87 feet. So again, hitting a little bit more of those draw shots. They're not super, super high. When I hit fades, you would see up in the mid 90s, but 87 was my average apex for all the shots. Don't have any club speed data because I didn't put any dots on here. I was using a Foresight, the one I took all these numbers for. I was using a GC quad, and I just didn't put any dots on the iron. So no club data there, but that's all the ball data. Overall, really impressed with the S3. I think these things are really solid. I think Mizuno did a fantastic job with these bad boys. I think you're going to see these in a ton of bags of better players. So the downside is that age-old question, and I used to ask it a ton too. I'm a 10 handicap that hits it pretty good with the irons. Can I play these? I think you need to pass. I think you need to move to something else. I think you need to move like even a 243, Mizuno Pro 243, something like that. I think you need to go that route. I think these on a bad day are just going to punish you. And I don't think you're going to enjoy the drop-offs you're going to see when you miss it. So, if you ask me like, oh, what's the handicap range on these? I'm going to go basically kind of a 6 and below, 6, 7 below. And I think that's the kind of player that's going to play these. But if you do and your game's there, congrats. Congratulations, because it's going to be good. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to love all the time you have with those because I think, again, one of the best feeling irons I've hit in a long, long time. All right, so the S3 is there for these highly skilled players that need it. And if you're a guy like me who needs a little more help, Mizuno offers something, or just came out with something that to help us guys a little bit more, which is the brand new JPX925 Forged. So this is the multi-material model that is a little less hot than the hot metal stuff. But it's going to offer you a good blend of a little bit of distance, some forgiveness, good feel, good sound. It's going to offer a little bit of everything. So it's going to offer speed without being crazy hot, and it's going to offer forgiveness without allowing still that better player to work the ball the way they want to. And you start with looks. I think these look pretty good. From the back, it was interesting. When I first pulled these out of the box, from the back, I was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I love them. And I think it was just because the way that the cavity is shaped, it kind of gave like a long stretched look to it. And when you look at it from the other angle, when you look at it from face, I'll try to do this if you're watching this on YouTube, which if you want to watch this on YouTube, you can. If you look on the face on, really good looking iron. I think it's got a great profile. I think it's proportionate. And I feel like when you look at it from the back, it's got this a little bit stretched look. And I think it's just from the way they do, the cavity's designed. So at first I was like, ooh, I don't know. And then, kind of set them down, and I said, wow, these look really, really good. And the same thing, 5.7 pitch. They have just a little bit of offset to them. Even in the 5-iron, it's not too much. They look really good. There's not a ton. There's just enough to give you a little bit of confidence, but not too much where you go, this is a big, this just isn't me. So that part I really like. Same kind of matte blast finish on these. Looks really solid. The black ones look fantastic. I had one of those as well, 7-iron in the black. It looks so good. It is just all jet black. They look sweet. I don't know how those will wear. We'll see. I saw some at the PGA show, some black ones that had been hit, and they didn't look that bad. I mean, there's a little wear to them, but they looked actually pretty good. So definitely some how do I want to say it? Definitely something to look forward to, that they didn't wear too bad. But overall, I think they did really well. These are definitely a little bit more rounded compared to the S3s. They've got little softer lines to them. The top line's a little bit thicker. It's not crazy, though. It's not bad. I don't mind the top line at all. And then, like I said, a little bit offset, a little bit more rounded toe, and overall blade length being a little bit larger, but definitely not out of control. The badging is simple. It's all just silver. The little Roadrunner icon and all that is in this badge. All really simple, nothing too crazy. And, just kind of a simple cavity back. But I think they did a nice job with these. I think they look good. They definitely look awesome in the all black. So either way you want to go, you can definitely do it. These things here, multi-piece, so it's got it's kind of got an interesting multi-material construction. So it's got a forged face that goes onto the body. So I think it's a chromoly body, chromoly face with a stainless back and the long irons, and then 4 through 7 gets a chromoly face, stainless back, and then the short irons are just forged from 1025. So interesting build on there, but they say the long irons are built to give you more help, get the ball higher in the air, while the short irons have been, again, same thing, help with scoring, precision, hit that lower controlled shot. So definitely a cool build to them. And yeah, I had the 7.5 in the pitch. I will say that the pitching wedge kind of had a more solid feel than the 7 and the 5. The 7.5 were good, don't get me wrong. But the pitching wedge definitely did have a little softer feel to it. So I think there is something to that kind of single piece versus the multi-piece. But these ones here, same thing. I think, in terms of looks, all that is good. Sound and feel, I think are pretty solid. It's kind of bummer when you hit S3 and then you go hit these. They don't feel as soft. I mean, S3 is crazy, but these feel really good. I was hitting these side by side to another kind of multi-piece forged iron, and I think definitely feels just as good. You definitely get a little bit more click. There's a little bit more firmness there. Again, this is the 2-piece one, so it's got the chromoly face and the stainless back. You can definitely feel just a little bit of firmness, a little bit of click on those center shots, off center shots. Again, it doesn't rise up too much. You kind of get a click that's slightly louder, but it doesn't raise a ton. So what I was kind of listening for when you hit it really off the toe or something like that, it didn't get crazy loud. The decibel level kind of stayed low. And overall, I thought they felt pretty good. Like I said, the pitching wedge has a little softer sound to it, just a little less click. And I think it's just that material difference. It's nothing crazy. I don't think you're going to sit there and hit between 7 and 8 iron and go, oh my gosh, these are two different sets of irons. But they're just slightly different. But sound and feel on them, really, really good. And then when it comes to performance, I think these things are really good. The funny thing is, I was hitting balls the second time I hit them, which is what I gained numbers on GC Quad. I was hitting with a coworker, and he even was watching. He's like, "You just hit those really hard," and I was like, "I do. Like, I just hit these things really hard. They're really solid." And I was putting up some what I thought were some good numbers, some good accuracy. I was a big fan of these forged. I think for a guy like me who's like that 10 handicap, I think this falls in line with that type of player. But performance wise, they're good. They're hot. They're like a lot of their players' distance irons. I put them kind of with like the P770, the T150s, those type of irons, maybe in between T150 and 200, but Apex Pro, where you're getting a little bit of heat out of the irons, but you're not going too far. It's not P790 long. It's not Hot Metal Pro or Hot Metal long. It's none of those. You're still reeling that in while still getting the distance. Like, I need a little help. I need a little oomph. I'm 43 years old. I'm going to be 44 here in a month. Excuse me. So having a little distance to it is huge. And, hitting that 7-iron, I think the first shot I hit with 7-iron went like 165. And I was like, oh man, that's good. But it didn't And it wasn't like a 2,000 RPM spin, just, flat out there. It was high. It had spin. Everything about it was just a good golf shot. So you saw definitely the distance on it. And the nice thing is, too, 5-iron wise, I was definitely up near that 180 mark. Now, when I didn't hit a flush, it would drop down a little bit, but I was at 180. I saw some 185s on there, 184s in terms of true carry distance, but it wasn't that far off, which was really good. And I could see where the S3, I didn't quite have enough firepower or enough swing speed to get that 5-iron to really go. With these, that added face, I could get these things to go a little bit. And they do have strong go-offs. I mean, like I said before, I think the 7-iron this is 30 degrees, the 5-iron is 24, and the pitching wedge is 43. So they're definitely strong, and that's fine. But I think also when you look at stronger lofts, you also need that, that lower, center of gravity and all those things to kind of work together. And I think they work really well here. But performance-wise, I think these things were good. They had just enough heat where I felt like I was getting them to where I needed to get them without being, without losing spin and looking at a spin number that's saying, oh man, I'm going to hit this thing out of the rough. It's going to go 30 yards of, longer or something like that. Ball speed also on mishits was really good. The drop, you could definitely tell the difference between S3 and these. The drop wasn't near as drastic, where I was hitting stuff routinely in kind of like that 114 realm when I hit it solid, even the high 114s, 114.7. I think I even saw, a 115 in there, but hit some 114s on this. And when I mishit it, it would still stay, in those 110, 108. It would stay kind of like that higher 100, where the S3, I saw some 102s when I really missed it. Here, nothing dropped that low. It would definitely stay hot. I would definitely still see better ball speed, and I wouldn't see as big a drop in the carry numbers. Now, if you really hit it, heel toe, it could drop like any iron. If you miss it enough, you can get it to drop. But when you hit it anywhere close to center, you're going to get away with a pretty solid shot. So with this one here, same thing. I kind of hit that straighter to slightly more draw ball. There were a couple fades that got up there, but the biggest thing I noticed with this was height. The initial launch was significantly higher than S3, no matter what the shot, whether it was a draw, whether it was a straighter shot, fade, every one of those shots launched higher than S3. And it was decent, and the apex was way higher. Angle of descent was better. It was just kind of one of those, like, when you hit it, you just kind of knew, like, wow, that was kind of the shot. Now, I can't compare them apples to apples because they both have different shafts. Like, that had a Project X60. This has the C-Taper Light, both in 6.0 in that, stiff in this. So they're not 100% because the C-Taper Light launches a little higher than the Project X and spins probably just a little bit more. But overall, I think this thing was really consistent for what it is. I never hit one that I just said, whoa, where did that come from? Like, never hit like a 180-yard pitching way or a 7-iron or something like that. Everything was in its realm. Like I said, the 5-iron was definitely easier to hit, definitely hit it higher, was able to carry it longer. And then the pitching wedge was good. I mean, it was one of those, like, you didn't really have to think about it. You just hit your shots, and hitting that 120 to 125 number was just kind of easy. It didn't matter if you hit it 100% or if you missed it just a touch. I could get it kind of around that range. Where the S3, I felt like I really had to hit it flush to get it there. So when I hit this with the 925s, my average carry was 160. And again, I saw some 165s. I saw some stuff that was lower when I missed it. But 160 was my carry number there. And when I look at that as an average, that makes me kind of know this is for me more because, misses and good shots, I'm able to hit the number I want to hit. That's what I'm looking for. And then spin number on this one was just a little bit lower. So 53.17. These are 7-irons as well. So 53.17 was my average. Again, I hit kind of a straight to draw ball, so I don't put a ton of spin on it. So about 500 RPM less than the S3. When it came to ball speed, average 112. So 3 miles an hour faster. I kind of average with these over the S3s. And the biggest one to me, again, that I noticed, launch 22.2 degrees was my average launch compared to 19.7. So almost not quite 3, but 2.5 degrees higher launch with the JPX 925 Forged. So easy to hit. I feel like that is a big thing when you get to the course. I love hitting it high, let it hit the green and stop. I love not worrying about, bunkers in front of the green or, anything like that. I can hit the green. I don't have to worry about it because the angle of descent is steep. So there, and then apex, same thing. 104 was my average. So 104 feet was my average there. So massively better for me than the Pro S3. But overall, these things, and then in terms of forgiveness, I think there was a good amount of stability in this head that you didn't necessarily get with the S3 because the S3, you're trying to hit shots. You got to allow a person to work it. These, when you missed it, it stayed much, much more online. My dispersion circle, bird's eye circle, much tighter with this. Just hitting those shots off the toe, off the heel a little bit, a little thin. They would carry further. They would go a little bit straighter. You just see a little less curve on those balls compared to the S3. So big fan of these. I actually I might see about getting a set of these, finishing out the set, the 4-7 pitch or 5-7 pitch. I may try to fill in those gaps there and see if these make a run, because I really like these. And like I said, even my coworker was just like, man, you were hitting those hard. Those just seem kind of powerful when you do it. And I was like, man, you're right. And like when you look at the launch, you look at the ball speed, you look at all that, this iron here just worked really well. So really impressed with the JPX925 Forged. I think these things are really solid. I'm excited. I want to kind of hit these more, especially out on the course. I would love to go play some with these, because I think they're really, really good. So, yeah, really good iron. I think this, for that kind of, I'll call it mid to low handicap player, I think these are really solid. If you're that 10 player who's a good ball striker, I think these fit in perfect. And you're not going to, when you set them down, you're not going to look at it and say, oh, that's a blade, but you're also not looking at it and saying, oh man, like it's got a ton of offset, it's a shovel. Like I don't want to play that. So, I think you got a good mix of both. I think this is that really good kind of, I like to call them cheater irons. I call the P770 a cheater iron. I call the T150 a cheater iron. They let you get away with some shots, but they also look really good from address and make you feel like a player. So really, really solid irons. Really liked the JPX 925 Forged. Like I said, I might try to play a little bit of those, because they were really good. So if you want to check out, excuse me, if you want to check out more, go to MizunoGolf.com, go to the irons, check out all the specs, all the stuff on both irons. They're really, really good. So review part's over. And yeah, so everybody's there. If you don't want to hear any more, you can stop. But it's, but yeah, last week was at the PGA show. It was a pretty good week. I flew in Sunday night. Late Sunday night. Again, I live in Metro Detroit, so flew out of Detroit into Orlando Sunday night. The flight was great. It was like slightly delayed, but nothing bad. And then got in, and it took forever to get my rental car. And then it took me took forever to get my bag. I think my bag was like the last one off the carousel. And then it took forever to get my rental car. I mean, it's just busy that time of year. Like every time that week comes around, I mean, everybody's coming in for this thing. So it took me forever to get to our Airbnb. We just rent a big old house with a bunch of Golf Directs people, so we can all hang out at night and stuff like that. So got there, and then Monday morning woke up and got to play golf. Went and played at Celebration, and it was fun. We had a good time. Myself and another coworker played with some two other guys, and we had a blast. We got smoked. Props to the two guys who played against. They were like a 16-10 handicap, and I think my boss is a little lower than me, but it was fun. For me, the biggest thing is not so much seeing new products, because there are new products there, not as many as you'd think, but there are new stuff. But to me, honestly, it's just seeing a lot of people, seeing a lot of friends, a lot of people that I only email with all year, and you finally get to see everyone, hang out, all that. So that's like the big part to me, is going to have a lot of fun and see a bunch of people. And it was really cool. Got to see, Jake from Made from the Range, Ian, Mikey, formerly TXG, now kind of doing their own things. Johnny Wonder was there. Brian from Brian Golf, Brian LaRoche, he was there. Dom from the Equipment Junkie. So I got to meet a bunch of people. Saw Salty from the Salty Golfer, but a whole bunch of people, and it was pretty cool. And it's always fun to see those guys and all that. And I'll give a big shout out to Jake from Made from the Range. He put together a little thing and wanted to get a bunch of us, I don't like to call us influencers, but just golf internet guys, social media internet guys together. And it was pretty cool. We took a big picture. If you go to the Club Junkie or my Instagram, Club Junkie Pod, or Jake's Made for the Range, I think Brian Golf, Brian LaRoche, I think he had it on his. Ian Frazier, I think, had it on his. But there was a picture of a bunch of us just in the Foresight booth, just a cool picture. And to be honest, it was cool just to be included with those guys, because most of those guys, Ian, Mike, Wonder, all those guys have been doing this stuff for so long, and Barath was there, just doing this so long, and to be included with those guys in that photo was pretty cool, because you know, I consider myself a pretty small figure here, and you know, my followers, you guys are awesome, but to be included with a lot of those guys was pretty cool and pretty special. So appreciate Jake adding me to the list of people, but it was a whole fun time, and getting to see those folks was a blast, along with a bunch of others, you know, people who work at OEMs and all that. It was great, but it's interesting. You know, people always ask about the show. You know, the first thing, you know, everybody wants to know is like, what's new at the big OEMs. The big OEMs don't really have a whole lot new. Most of their stuff is already launched, or stuff that is going to be launched is further down the pipeline. They just don't have a lot there. And to tell you what, walking through most of the booths, they're really scaled back. When you look at like what was in Callaway's booth in terms of like clubs, there were very few. I mean, they had a small putting green with some putters on it. They had a few drivers and a few things around, but like overall, that booth is for the size a little bit empty. Same thing with Titleist. You walk in there, they had the cool, of course, Scotty Cameron display set up, but overall, it was, you know, a little bit of product. There's just not much there, because for the big OEMs, like it's just there's not, like, and even Cobra, like you walk in their booth, it was massive, but there's not a whole lot of like stuff there, equipment, because it doesn't need to be. Like all the shops, all the green grass accounts, they put in their orders for equipment. It's already ordered. They're just waiting on it to show up. So you're not booking any business down there or anything like that. So the big OEMs, I mean, Srixon probably had the most packed booth in terms of like amount of equipment in their space. Mizuno is a little bit spread out. I mean, they have a smaller booth, but the big OEM guys just don't. You know, that show is just, it's not much for them. You know, the way it's designed, really, it's the accessories, the equipment, the course equipment, you know, clothing, all that. Like that's the stuff you're actually down there doing business with. You know, but the big OEM guys, I mean, it's pretty status quo. There's nothing too crazy. Which, I mean, I know you know, everybody gets excited, like, oh man, title's there. What's it like? It's kind of a little bit of an empty booth. So after the big OEMs, I mean, the fun stuff to see is kind of a lot of the accessory stuff and the clothing. And accessories, you know, always kill it when you walk around. All the, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of the big names from head covers like PRG and Swag. And now Swag was an interesting one. Swag was like, when you walk in the main entrance, you're kind of in kind of like technology row. You walk in and you know, it's a lot of like rangefinders, and there's equipment and GPS and a lot of stuff like that, like, you know, electric push carts. And then when you go to the right is all, you know, get into accessories and stuff like that, and then you get into apparel the further right you go, and that pretty much goes until the end, and it goes a long way. But it was funny. Swag was at the very end. They were like the front most furthest booth down to the right that you could possibly go, and that place, while it was small, had a lot of really cool head covers. It was packed because they had a claw vending machine that you could go win a head cover. So it was full of head covers, all that, and you could go win head covers. And the line for that thing was super long the whole time. Every time you went by there, it was just a crazy long line of people waiting to get their shot at the claw machine. And I think it was free to use. I think it was just like, you know, free to use. You just walked up and you got your turn. And I saw a couple people win head covers as I was over there at that booth. But it was probably one of the coolest things that I have seen some people do, and they were in a weird spot being all the way in that corner, because not not as many people as you think make it all the way down there. So that was a pretty cool one. The other accessories, you know, you see, like I said, you know, PRG, Pins and Aces, all those guys with all their head covers, Winston Collection, all of their head covers out there, and there was a bunch of really cool ones. There is every year. It's awesome to see the creativity out there with a lot of people, and then the apparel brands. I mean, True Linkswear was packed. Those guys always had tons of people in there. You know, it's funny. Certain people I remember, um, who is it? I'm trying to think. Geez, like Galvin Green was packed. I mean, all pretty much most of the decent sized names. There was no, you know, Nike Golf was there for shoes, a little bit of clothing in the Srixon booth, because Srixon does their distribution, but they didn't really have a separate booth. Adidas had like, I think, something really small down at the end, but a lot of it, you know, the clothing stuff and all that is pretty cool. And that's the stuff that when I walk by is interesting to me, because I don't see the clothing stuff, I don't see the shoes, I don't see the accessories. Cole Haan had some really cool shoes out there. But it was just you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting show, the dynamic that you think it is compared to what it really is. And yeah, there was this year, just like last year, I think there was so much tech in there. When you look at all the launch monitor stuff and the GPS and the laser rangefinders, and you know, all that kind of stuff, the apps. there's so much of that stuff going on, and that's a huge part. That just seems to getting bigger and bigger every year, and everybody's kind of showing off, what they're doing and how they're doing stuff differently. And the cool one to see was the integration. I think the cool thing between Foresight and Bushnell, I believe they have some type of like ownership umbrella between them, but seeing they released it a little bit ago, but showing off the link system where you go on, you hit all 13 clubs in your bag as an assessment on the launch monitor. You get all your distances. It looks at distance, height, descent angle, all that for all your clubs, and then that loads into a link enabled laser rangefinder. And once that's linked up, then you go with a laser rangefinder, and it will tell you what club to use. It'll make a recommendation based on slope, elevation, weather, all that stuff, and it takes into account the distance you fly it, the angle of descent. So if it knows like you're hitting up into an elevated green, it'll make a prediction based on what it thinks that land angle is going to be and all that. But a pretty cool system that also integrates with Bushnell's like GPS phone app, so you can see kind of a bird's eye view of where shots will land, like off the tee box, and decide to play different things differently. But a lot of cool stuff there. Flight Scope's doing something similar, where they've got the i4 laser rangefinder that does the same thing, kind of connects up and loads data. The only thing with theirs though is that it allows you to go in and put in your distances, and I believe it does use slope and elevation. I don't know if it uses temperature and weather. I have to look into it a little further. That was the first time seeing it. They just kind of showed it there, but interesting that you can just type in your yardages, because I think the people that would find the most benefit from it are the people that don't know their yardages, and being able for that to tell them like, hey, maybe you want to use 5-iron here, and if they put in there they hit their 5-iron 200 yards and they only hit it 180. Well, it's not going to it's going to recommend you the 5-iron, but you're not going to get it there, and it's not going to come out to be the shot you want it to. But that kind of stuff is pretty cool, and it's pretty interesting to see just where we're taking all this data that we're collecting in golf and now putting it to use on course. Before it was just used to do fittings and used to do a little bit of course management or something. There wasn't a whole lot of use for it on the course, and now we're seeing a lot of people use it, out on the course, which is pretty cool. I think that just, it's opening doors for, future advancement, more stuff. And I think it's just going to go further, between the simulation stuff, all that is just going to keep pushing and going forward. I think prices are going to come down. I mean, we've already seen some stuff that's coming out that's fairly inexpensive. I mean, just a lot in the technology side, and the wearable GPS stuff that can then integrate with all that. It's just it's a pretty cool time to see where technology is going in golf, and that's I think like the big story there of seeing that kind of stuff. So it was a whole lot of fun. Had a nice dinner on Thursday with Moto Caddy and a bunch of those guys, people from there. But yeah, overall it was just a whole lot of fun. You get really sore feet because you put in like 13 to 15,000 steps a day just walking around, but you get to meet some really cool people, and I got to meet people who gave me a lot of love for what I've done online, and said they loved liked the content and all that, and it was very very nice, and very nice to hear. I was very appreciative of all those people who were willing to come up and say hi and all that, so I appreciate every one of you for doing that. But it was a good show. It was pretty busy. I want to say there were like I think they said there were the most booths there since 2009. I think there were like 1,100 booths at the place. I haven't looked to see what the stat is for how many people showed up, but it's always it's always packed. So it was really a whole lot of fun. It was really cool. It's I think a little different than people think. If you think it was a public show, I think it would be altered just a little bit different if you opens up stuff to the public. I think you'd see more stuff being sold and things like that. This is primarily stuff on display and hopefully getting into your shop or your country club or whatever. But it was a whole lot of fun. So met some cool people, had a bunch of laughs, had a bunch of smiles, and I was tired and slept on the whole flight home, and it was great. So 2025 PGA show is done, and hopefully launch stuff is starting to slow down, so we'll be getting into more of the review stuff and more of that fun. So anyway, I know I just rambled on about the PGA show, and if you had any idea of how this podcast went in terms of when I started it to cutting stuff out to going to here, whatever, it was an absolute just head scratcher. So hopefully you guys have a great week. If you want to follow me on Instagram, please, Club Junkie Pod. If you want to watch us on YouTube, you can just look up Golf WX Radio, or Club Junkie will probably bring it up. And yeah, if you could like, subscribe, whatever, wherever you listen to podcasts, we greatly appreciate that as well. But hey, that's it for this week. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Play some golf, hit some balls, do whatever you can. And I'm going to try to do the same. So we'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.